No.
It's $100 billion job. You know how hard that is to find that? This is a catastrophic situation. So when you're hearing these stories being talked about, here's the lady, Rob. Did you find the clip where she's being asked about?
So I found a bunch of different clips. I'm waiting for Brandon to send me the right one.
But it's that one right there. The one you're on. It's with Josh Hawley asking her
right
questions.
Here. That's it.
Yep.
Ms. Marcos, can I just start with you? You testified a moment ago to Senator Butler that every child gets a Know Your Rights presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that before or after you release them to labor traffickers?
Senator, every child that comes into our care gets a Know Your Rights presentation as well as...
Have you read these New York Times reports, these stories, the series of stories the New York Times has done on the children who are in your care? Have you read them?
Yes, I have.
Have you read that children are scrubbing dishes, they are operating heavy machinery, they are delivering meals, they are harvesting coffee, they are working construction, they are working as housekeepers, they are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid, they are not going to school, they are not cared for, they are not giving meals, almost all of it illegally. Are you aware of that? That's a yes or no?
Yes.
Are you kidding me? So she's not even denying it that they know about this, right? Then you look at the report to say, okay, so let's see how many calls of traffic and abuse of migrant children are coming in. Go back to that one that you had, Rob. Look at this here, guys. Zoom in. So that's 2018 to 2021, 2022 under Biden. Blue is reports of abuse or neglect. Look at the number of calls daily. Daily calls, monthly calls. Look at that. 250 is the top. You were getting none of that. Look at the yellow, reports of trafficking. See what's going on with the blue and what's going on with the yellow? People are calling saying, please help me, please help me, please help me.
Yeah.
This is what they're going through. So for us to sit there and say, let's send more money to Ukraine, so Ukraine's more important than, let's send more money, it's almost as if we were talking with Brandon and it almost feels like someone is benefiting from looking away. Now, I don't know if that's the case or not, but these are not complicated things that we're looking at. It's pure data. If a stock goes from $8,000 to $149,000 in 14 years, what do you say? Wow.
Yeah.
$8 to $149,000. Pretty solid. You tell me what goes from 8,000 in 2008 to 149,000. Oh, you know what does? The number of unaccompanied alien children to 2008 to today. You don't want to go figure that part out? Where are these people? Where are these kids? What are they doing? It's a travesty what's going on. So the fact that Tom Homan's out there, him and Kristi Noem were out there, right, being questioned about some of these things, Rob, if you have that. And one of our old friends, I think, is in the back. If you can play this clip, go for it.
Mr. Homan and Secretary Noem, can we ask you a few questions here, please? Would you guys gaggle with reporters for a few moments? Thank you. You are both the top immigration advisors to President Trump, in addition to Stephen Miller. He just announced that he's signing an executive order to put 30,000 detention beds at Guantanamo Bay. I know, Mr. Homan, you've talked about needing more beds, but how exactly would that work, and when do you expect it to open?
That is something that the White House is working on, to use resources that we currently have there at Guantanamo Bay. So we'll go through the process. The worst of the worst is where that could be utilized. So that potential is there. We know we need the infrastructure. We're going after these guys.
But who would run that? DHS or the Pentagon?
What you probably don't know, there's already a migrant center there. It's been there for decades. So we're just going to expand upon the existing migrant center.
How would logistics work for that? How would you get migrants down to Guantanamo?
We fly them to Guantanamo. Coast Guard, they encounter people in maritime, they can take them straight to Guantanamo Bay.
The way he answers it, it's like, what are you talking about? We've been doing it for a while. We just haven't been doing it the last 4 years.
We're doing it. We're already doing it. Would that be more expensive? We're building it out and using our resources.
Mr. Homan, Secretary Noem, what kind of civilian oversight would there be?
Civilian oversight?
Yeah.
The current civilian oversight that we have in our federal government today. We had an election in November that clearly said the American people don't want these criminals and dangerous individuals on our streets anymore. We're taking care of it at the federal
government. What's your message for Polish Americans who voted for President Trump and may have neighbors or family members who are undocumented, who are illegally here?
Listen, the law applies to everybody. It applies to American citizens. It applies to people who come into this country illegally. You will be held accountable for breaking our laws.
Jeez, it's so annoying. Okay, so Byron, here's where I'm coming from. So Byron, this is where I'm coming from. So when we talk about Biden, I honestly, genuinely do not think he had any decision making the entire time. Speaker Johnson just did that podcast. I forgot Barry Weiss, where he was saying basically he gets ambushed by Kamala, the Schumers. He doesn't make any decisions. He didn't even know what the hell he was signing. When it comes to that blatant invasion, Byron, because that's exactly what we've had for the past 4 years, brother. It's been an invasion. They have terrorists. They have the kids. They have the drugs. They have Chinese. It's on all different fronts. Byron, how did they get away with it? I understand he's the president, but who's really behind it, and what was their actual objective? Was it for all this turnstile stuff? Was it because they're like, all right, listen, we're going to have all these kids. We can do whatever we want with them. Labor, sex trafficking, whatever. We could, have terrorists just in case we want anybody to ever do whatever. And we have all the drugs. Who's really making the decision? I know Alejandro Mayorkas was the head of Homeland Security, but what's the main goal of saying, guys, open the border, let everybody in? What?
The Democrat Party has wanted open borders for decades.
And what's the main goal for
Because back up. The Democrats are largely a factional party. They're a party of factions. Abortion, open borders, etc. All of their different planks. So how they kind of operate as a party is, you may not really this might not be your issue, but since this is a party, we support all the issues. The staff, and that's why personnel is policy. So what Donald Trump's doing with federal workers and how they just came in with their team ASAP is because personnel is policy. When you have staffers in the White House who are committed, who work with La Raza, who work with these other groups that are totally fine with illegal immigration and open borders to expand our welfare state here in the United States, all they have to do is write the order on day one. They just stuck the thing in front of Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. When Joe Biden became the nominee of the Democrats in South Carolina back in, I think it was 2020, the deal had been cut that they thought Bernie Sanders would lose. So they all came together, cut the deal, and said, okay, we're going to do Joe Biden. So the deal, part of the deal that basically everybody knows now is Joe Biden had to basically sign off on all the crazy policies. So that was the deal. The staff that went in, it was their vision to do this. That's why overnight they ended Remain in Mexico. They stopped border wall construction. They did all these things. The reason why unaccompanied minors were the first big tranche was because of COVID-19 and Title 42, because Title 42 would not allow adults into the country. That was under Title 42 because of COVID-19. They wouldn't let adults in, but our policy was, but if a child comes in, we will let that child in. So the cartels knew this. Jeez. And that what they did is they would send tranches, 50 kids, 75 kids, 100 kids. I've seen it where they would walk right up to our border agents and say, we're here and we need you to process us. And the kids are given a script to say. I was on the border. There was a girl in this group that got stopped and we were talking to the girl and she's like, yeah, this is my 4th time coming across. Oh. This is business. The Biden administration knew that it was business. The staffers at Homeland and at the White House knew this was going on. They wanted it to go on. They knew young girls were being raped on the journey to our southern border. They knew this. They didn't care. And then the other people who are part of this, complicit in this, are the NGOs. The NGOs operate on both sides of the border in order for this entire process to happen. And they use kids as the first wave of it because we as a country would say, if kids come to our border, we will accept them in. But because of COVID rules and Title 42, we're not going to accept in adults. And that's what happened. It is a staffing issue. It is an ideological issue in the Democrat Party. Even today, they argue against Tom Homan and what he's trying to do because for them, they have always wanted open borders. And this is where people who have studied and read about the Cloward-Piven strategy of you overwhelm the system in order to rebuild the system, that their strategy, some Democrats, not all, some are, you overwhelm each aspect of the federal system. And so that when it breaks down, then you get to point the finger and then you get to design the new. And that's really at the core of what's going on. But that's why Donald Trump was elected to stop all this.
Who are the NGOs that you were referencing?
The biggest ones are Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities is an NGO. Okay. They get money from the federal government for nonprofit goodwill work. We have NGOs operating all over the world. I would argue we have too many NGOs that are not operating in the interest of the United States, but the deep state has been funding them for decades.
Catholic Charities
is one of them. So Catholic Charities is one of the larger NGOs. They operate, I believe, yes, on both sides of the border. And they'll do things like bring clothes, bring water, bring food, stuff like that. Because when these kids or even adults, when they're coming up to the border, they might get a liter of water in their journey. That's it. So they come up starving. They're starving. They're hungry. They're malnourished, etc. Catholic Charity steps in and provides aid. And the way the Catholic Church views it is we're providing aid to people who are truly in need, and that's their mission. They are given federal funds through the NGO process in order to do that. The problem is that we fund this, but it's against our national interest to do this. And that's why you have all these funding fights in Washington. Because when you start turning these spigots off, it goes to a lot of groups or a lot of contractors who've had their hand in the kitty for a long time. And then when you start dialing that stuff down, that's when you get these reactions of, you're cutting off poor people, you're doing this, you're doing that. Yeah. No, we are right-sizing the federal government, one, so it can actually be efficient for a change, and it can actually do the things that are in the interest of the United States and its people.
If I can just kind of summarize exactly what I heard